Well, it's becoming increasingly clear as we look at the numbers that Joe Biden is going to need to reach out to Bernie Sanders supporters if he wants to have any chance of winning this thing in November. And so he's come out with a plan to do this. And guys, I'm not joking with you. I was scrolling through Twitter when I first saw this thing, and the headline was Joe Biden reaches out to Bernie Sanders supporters, and it had like a list. It said lowering Medicare age from 65 to 60. I literally laughed and clicked on the article thinking that it was going to load up The Onion. I thought that it was a joke. I thought it was like a complete satire. And then when the page loaded up, I realized that it was MSNBC, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is serious. This is actually what he's trying to do to reach out to us, supposedly. I don't even know. I'm not sure that this is actually trying to reach out to us, if I'm being entirely honest. I mean, this is so weak sauce, so pitiful. Lowering the Medicare age from 65 to 60 and then having a student debt forgiveness program, which that one actually might be at least a little bit more geared towards trying to court over young voters, but there's tons of means testing. It's not actually interested in trying to figure out what progressives and what the left is actually interested in. I mean, this is his sort of article where he talks about it a little bit. He says here, lowering the eligibility age for Medicare from 65 to 60. By the way, guys, this is more conservative, more right-wing than Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton wanted to lower it to I think 55 or something like that. And by the way, Amy Klobuchar, the sort of left-winger that she is, wants to lower it down to 50 or something like that. She's supported a bill to do something like that. So this is actually more right-wing than complete, the rightest wingers of the Democratic Party. I mean, it just goes to show you how weak sauce this is. I don't actually think that the lowering of the Medicare thing actually has anything to do with actually trying to court over progressives, and the fact that the mainstream media is running with it, pretending oh, we're really trying to court. Oh, look at this. Look at how Joe Biden is really trying to court progressives and court Bernie supporters is a complete joke. And any mainstream media person saying that is a complete hack. I mean, it's not even a question at this point. I mean, that's not even. Anyway, and then the student debt forgiveness program, you could argue that one probably is a little bit more geared towards courting over young voters, courting over young people who are more likely to support Bernie Sanders. But honestly, that one is so means tested and so sort of, oh, you get it, and then you kind of don't, but then you do, Anyway, it's one of those programs that it isn't really geared in any way to try to court over the left. Brianna Joy Gray does a great job breaking it down here. Joe Biden's plan appears to exclude graduates of for-profit colleges, who, by the way, are the most indebted. You can actually see right here, 88% of graduates from for-profit colleges had loans as of May of 2018. With significantly more debt, and then 1/3 of the students who attend private colleges and private schools, which includes me, I went to a private university, and graduates of trade schools. Joe Biden, I thought you really cared about trade schools, but their debt isn't forgiven. And graduate student debt, which is actually really important. There's a lot of people who go to grad school, especially, by the way, those making over $125,000 a year. And you may think to yourself, well, hold on, why are we forgiving the debt of people making over $125,000 a year? Guys, when it comes to college debt especially, there's a lot of instances, especially those who went to graduate school, who went to grad school and then got a bunch of debt and may be able to get a really good paying job, but they still end up spending years and years and years paying off that debt because they went to graduate school, but that debt was so expensive, especially when you pair it up with undergraduate debt, that they may have gotten a decent paying job, but they're not actually ending up able to really spend that money because so much of their income ends up just going to debt for years and years and years. And also, just as a matter of principle, the left has always been in favor of universal programs and not a big fan of sort of means-tested programs. And part of that is just a different conception of politics. Sort of neoliberals have always thought about, these various social programs as kind of a leg up, right? The world, it's all about the economy. And so the government is just there to give you a leg up, give you a boost up when you can't quite make it. Whereas the left has always said that actually we should think about government entirely different. The government just provides certain programs because that's what you get as just being human, that you get as a member of, being part of America, that you get these certain things. And then that's just sort of how it is. And so it really just shows how Joe Biden doesn't actually understand the left, doesn't really actually understand the Bernie Sanders movement. He thinks that he can make sort of piecemeal adjustments to the policies that are already in place in order to court over Bernie Sanders supporters because, it's a little bit closer to what you want, but not really recognizing that actually what Bernie Sanders wants, what the progressives want, is in some respects qualitatively different than, it's different entirely. It's on a different plane than what Joe Biden wants in some sense, because it's not just the specific things of that we want. It's also just we want a different way of thinking about politics, and having that shift of consciousness is actually a really big part of the progressive movement that Joe Biden just doesn't seem to understand in any kind of way, shape, or form. And we're really starting to see this just complete confusion, complete misunderstanding of the progressive movement across the sphere. You know, I mean, Matt Yglesias has been just on Twitter, just like attacking Bernie supporters, basically, for, you know, not falling in line, I guess, with Joe Biden. And one of the tweets he put out, which a lot of people were making fun of here, was the Sunrise Movement did a tremendous disservice to their constituents' understanding of the issues and dealt a potentially devastating blow of their own cause by giving Joe Biden an F grade. Guys, the reason why he's upset about this is because he's like, well, hold on, Donald Trump's climate plan is significantly worse than Joe Biden. So why are they giving Joe Biden an F when, you know, Donald Trump is worse? But what you need to understand about this, and Nathan Robinson did a really great talk about this on The Hills Rising. If you want to watch that video, you can find it on their YouTube channel. But basically what he pointed out, and this was a fantastic thing to point out, is that it's relative to the sort of degree of the problem, right? So climate change is such a disaster that Joe Biden's plan fails. It doesn't it doesn't do anything to actually get us to solve the problem in the first instance. So of course, yeah, it fails in the same way that Trump's fails, right? If, you know, so say Joe Biden gets, you know, a 49 and Trump gets a 39, well, they both got an F on the test, right? It's the same way. You can't measure it in terms of, oh, well, it's marginally better, that means that we should give them a higher grade. No, you still failed the test, right? That's not how you, we're not grading on a curve here. We're grading in terms of, did you have the ability to actually solve the problem in the first instance? And Joe Biden's plan is inadequate. It's not sufficient. It doesn't actually do anything to actually solve the issues. And, you know, one of the things that we're really seeing right now is that when it came to Donald Trump's election, a lot of people were willing to suck it up. A lot of Republicans who didn't necessarily like Donald Trump were willing to suck it up and vote for Donald Trump because they saw, you know, I mean, a lot of the things that they were voting on were social issues, which they thought were really existential. On the left, though, it's not necessarily an existential case, because the things that we're concerned about, it's quite clear that Joe Biden isn't going to actually do anything when it comes to climate change. The issues that we see as existential, like climate change, right? Like Medicare for all, those existential issues aren't going to be addressed at all in this administration. And so we don't necessarily see it as an existential election in the way that, you know, Donald Trump was able to pitch it as when it came to the Supreme Court, when it came to these social issues like abortion. And so, you know, I mean, it just really shows you how completely little neoliberals understand about us, how we see politics differently, guys. That's the one thing that I constantly kind of come back to on this channel, which is that the mental model, the sort of schema which people use to understand politics, actually affects the very things that they believe when it comes to politics. And if you don't understand that, then you're actually just going to completely misunderstand the other side. And that's something that neoliberals often do to us. And to be fair, the left also sometimes does to neoliberals as well. But you should try to avoid that. And one of the things that David Dole pointed out here is actually, and I showed this probably like a week or maybe even 2 weeks ago on this channel, was this enthusiasm gap when it comes to Donald Trump versus Joe Biden. Enthusiasm for Trump supporters, 53% saying that they are very, very enthusiastic. Whereas for Joe Biden, we're looking at 24%, only 24% saying they're very enthusiastic. And most people are like, meh, yeah, I'm somewhat enthusiastic. And 26%, massive here, saying that they are not at all enthusiastic about Joe Biden. I would put myself for sure on this 26%. They didn't poll me, but that's where I would be. I'm not at all enthusiastic. Actually, I don't know if I'd be on this because I guess I'm not a Biden supporter, so I don't know. But anyway, what I'm saying here is this enthusiasm gap here is actually worse than Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton had more enthusiastic voters than Joe Biden. Joe Biden, I mean, he got in here by an accident of history. It was a complete accident of history that he managed to win this thing because they completely hid him from the public eye, so nobody knew where he was. Nobody could actually assess him. None of the voters could. And then what they saw on Bloody Monday, when everybody came out and endorsed Joe Biden was, oh, well, I guess we've decided Joe Biden. I guess we're going with Joe Biden then. And then, you know, because it was such a short time frame from Bloody Monday to Super Tuesday, literally one day, they didn't actually have any time to do any research. So if their first choice was Pete Buttigieg or Amy Klobuchar or something like that, they're like, oh, well, they turned around and, endorsed Joe Biden. I guess that's who I'm going for because they're out of the race now. And so then they turned around and voted for Joe Biden. They didn't actually have any time to look at it because if you actually broke down the numbers in terms of who their second choice voters were, I mean, it was a bit mixed, but Pete Buttigieg, like his voters were generally mixed and half of them were saying, yeah, Bernie Sanders second, et cetera, et cetera. But that often just really ended up swinging when it turned out that Pete Buttigieg, as soon as he dropped out, endorsed Joe Biden, right? So the headline that voters saw was Pete Buttigieg drops out, endorses Joe Biden. So they saw both pieces of information at the same time. So Buttigieg supporters were like, well, okay, I guess I'm going with Biden, and same thing with Klobuchar, et cetera, et cetera. And so it ended up just being a complete mess of a scenario where Bernie Sanders got shut out because everybody just left at once. And so anyway, what I'm saying is it was a complete accident that Joe Biden won this thing and voters aren't enthusiastic. It's not surprising at all. The DNC did this to just because all their energy, the only thing they cared about was actually stopping Bernie Sanders. They didn't actually care about putting front a candidate who was, had energy behind them, who, voters actually wanted, voters actually supported. It was all about an anti-Sanders vote because they had to stop Bernie Sanders because Bernie Sanders was actually going to change things. Bernie Sanders was actually going to do things and put people, who are sitting up there in comfortable positions, comfortable jobs. He was going to put their jobs at risk. And that's why they stopped him. Simple as that. Pure ambition. Pure, just ego-driven ambition. And that's why they had to stop him, because Bernie Sanders was an actual threat to them. Bernie Sanders was an actual threat to the establishment. And that's why they had to stop him. So, it just really goes to show you, and Joe Biden's attempt to court us is pitiful and it's ridiculous. And I'm not buying any of this. If this is all that's coming, I won't be voting for Joe Biden. Not you can guarantee that one. Joe Biden is going to have to do some serious courting if he wants to win us. Now, there is a bit of debate right now among progressives, some progressives like Crystal Ball, Kyle Kulinski to some extent, and I think Sawhill of Progressive Voice said something along this line, along these lines on at least a live stream. Saying basically we would actually be more, they're saying that they would be more interested in seeing specific cabinet choices, specific picks for people who would be in the administration, as opposed to talking about policy positions that aren't actually going to get adopted. I mean, one of the things that we've been seeing over the past couple presidential cycles is that maybe two things of a president's agenda actually get passed, which, by the way, what is Biden's agenda? I don't know. I don't know the thing that he's actually going to fight for. But, you only get a few things. And so Joe Biden putting up a policy saying, oh, I'm going to do this or I support this actually doesn't really do anything. I mean, it really doesn't even do anything. So a lot of progressives right now are coming around and saying that actually, if you want to court us, the thing that you can do is put progressives in your cabinet, commit to specific names that who you're going to put in the cabinet, and then we can have a conversation. I don't know if that's going to be enough to get my vote. But it's certainly, I do agree that it's a better thing to do than pretending like you're going to do something when it comes to policy. So we'll have to see what happens. So far, Joe Biden has done absolutely nothing to earn my vote. So anyway, that's the video. If you liked it, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like button and consider subscribing. Thanks.